did I talk about this the other day? How I went to the Blippi show? Did I tell you about this?
No.
All right. So do you know who Blippi is? Have you ever heard of Blippi?
I don't know what that is. No.
All right. So like, remember like back in the day we had Barney or like, like Pee Wee Herman or whatever. He's like, it's a dude. So he kind of looks like Pee Wee Herman or whatever, but he's more like a Barney or, Sesame Street style show. So basically there's a guy who went on YouTube, created this brand called Blippi, and he's entertaining. So he'd be like, oh, and by the way, the funny thing that he does is there's no like set. He just goes into like, hey, we're at the aquarium, but they just go in like after 9 p.m. It's like closed down. And so it's just, they have it all to themselves. Like, hey, we're here in Las Vegas at this rock climbing studio. And so he just uses that to film his thing, but he gives it a shout out at the beginning of the video. The video gets like 40 million views. So it's like, it's worth it to let these guys film there. And he just like goes around and he'll basically just play with toys. He'll be like, I'm at an abandoned Chuck E. Cheese. And he'll go play with a bunch of toys. And there's like music and whatever overlaid.
And it's the same guy. I'm looking at him now. It's the same guy every single time.
It is, except for as he blew up and got famous, then they switched him out with just a stunt double for a bit. And so like that guy's like a substitute teacher sometimes. And then sometimes Blippi comes back. But like the main guy is the main guy. He wears this outfit. It's like this blue outfit with his orange glasses. He like always looks the same. So anyways, my daughter loved Blippi. We used to watch a ton of Blippi. And all of a sudden we see this ad that says Blippi, like the live show is coming to Oakland. And so we were like, oh shit. And so instantly my wife buys tickets for all of us in the family. We go to this thing last weekend and it's at the same place you did HustleCon. So it's at the Paramount Theater and it is packed. Like, HustleCon was like, sold out ish. This was like sold out. Like even the back shitty seat is like sold out. And it's full of parents and their kids. And then there's they basically just created like a little play, like a little mini musical, 1 hour, because kids don't have that long of an attention span. And it's just kind of like music and like, lights and colors. And he's, oh, dinosaurs. Oh, rocks. Oh,
how much did it cost?
So every ticket, I want to say was
that venue seats
maybe like $60 a seat, something like that.
So that venue seats between 2,500 and 3,000, I believe.
Yeah. So I think there was 2,000 there. And I believe the tickets were something like 50, 60, $70, something like that.
So we're in like 120,000.
And then he played 4 shows in a row that weekend. And then he went to the next city. So it was he had done 8 shows or he was doing something like that. So it was like some crazy like thing where I was like, oh, wow, this weekend they made whatever, $800,000. And yeah, the tickets basically range from like, $60 to $90. And the place is lit, by the way. So like, he comes on stage, kids go crazy. He's like, he'd be like, what does the bubble do? And everyone's like, pop. And he's like, when I say pop, can you say pop? And like, so it's like not like a quiet show, like, because kids are loud anyways. So some kids are just not paying attention. Like my daughter during intermission was like, I want to watch Blippi on YouTube. And so we like had to open up YouTube on our phone and give it to her during intermission because she couldn't like go 5 minutes without stimulation. And so and then they have like the merch and the concessions. They have like all that shit, right? So it's like pretty dope actually. And I was like, wow, this is kind of genius. They just took YouTube IP, and this guy who was there was not Blippi. The guy on stage was just some, theater kid who like didn't make it. And so he's like, all right, plan B, I'll be Blippi. And so it was like they took the IP, but they made their own show out of it. And so I started looking into this, and there's a company that does this called V-Star Entertainment.
Awesome.
So V-Star, what they do is they go license these kids brands, and then they put on kids Broadway basically, and they tour around the country.
Awesome.
And so
and Blippi's just a guy with a guitar, right? Or were there more instruments?
No guitar. He just him. He just walks around.
Were there any instruments, or was it just like a soundtrack?
No, just soundtrack and like lights and like stage props. So
wow.
Like,
so he only had like his crew.
Dancers. Like, if they came out as sharks, like a bunch of like little backup dancers came out as sharks, and then they whatever. Like
that's awesome.
It's a mini theater show, right? And so V-Star Entertainment, they do another brand that you've probably heard of or you may have heard of called Paw Patrol. It's basically another kids cartoon. So guess how much, this is my like kind of triangulation. Guess how much they sold in Paw Patrol tickets last year? Just take a guess.
20 mil?
$40 million.
$40 million in event tickets?
In event tickets and that's just the tickets, not the merch.
And that was just last year in 22?
I don't know. It's like, this is like the just before COVID numbers. So like, I don't know, 2019, 2020, something like that.
Wow.
So they got bought by Cirque du Soleil. So the backstory is some guy decides, oh, you know what? Like he's watching Sesame Street. He's like, Sesame Street should do a live show. And he goes and he basically raises 500 grand from this guy. He mortgages his house, gets an extra 25 grand out of his home equity. So he's got $525,000. And he goes and he gets the license to Sesame Street. And he started with the Sesame Street show and then Muppets and like, he did.
But that must have been years ago.
This was in the, like 1980, something like that.
Yeah.
And then this other guy was doing it. They merged. And then that whole thing gets bought by Cirque du Soleil last year. Cirque du Soleil, by the way, like, guess how much Cirque du Soleil revenue was? Have you ever been to a Cirque show?
No, I've not, but I do know that the guy who started it is a Canadian guy. He's a billionaire. I read Dan Blazarian's book, and they talk about that guy a lot. I think he's like, he started a circus, so he's like
Liberty or whatever.
Yeah, he's really eccentric and wild and everything. So it made him a billionaire. How much revenue does it make?
Ben, have you been to a Cirque du Soleil show? Cirque du Soleil does $1 billion a year in revenue, which is insane. 10%, 5 or 10% of all Las Vegas tourists go to a Cirque show when they're in town.
Is that what's that at? Cirque? Is that like the name?
Well, they have like 10 shows, right? It'll be like they have and then they have Zoomanity, and they have like whatever.
And the Beatles. I know all about it, and I'm into it. And it's publicly traded, or at least it was before it was acquired by private equity, right?
Yeah, private equity owns it now, and it's a pretty badass business. The idea was do a circus, but no animals. So it was like only human performers. And to do that, they did like crazy acrobats and like great costumes.
It's basically its own genre at this point, though.
Right. And so he built that thing into a real juggernaut. And so Cirque then bought Blue Man Group and V-Star Entertainment. And so they got Blue Man, which is like an ad. What they had said was like, we do 10 million in ticket sales a year for Cirque du Soleil. Blue Man adds another 2 million. And then V-Star adds another 2 million. But they're all like different ticket prices. But like they do 14 million in tickets sold per year. And so this like live entertainment thing really has caught my attention because I think as the world moves more and more digital, the demand for like these one-off experiences, like, hey, let's get out of the house and go do something. Totally. I think it's just going to keep going up. Music festivals, that's a winner. And then there's like, I think plays and musicals are going to be a winner. I think they're going to be bigger than they were before, even though the world moves digital. And in fact, because the world moves digital. What do you think about all this?
I 100% agree. And so earlier today, I sent you a Notion doc of some of my notes on, I'm interested in peer businesses, which is basically like you pay money and you're part of a club and you meet up with them. And I can't talk too much about what the names of the companies were, but they were doing like, one of them does 100 million a year in profit. And it's basically 2 or 3 meetups a year, and there's executives paying $50,000 a year to be part of them. And I think actually these are going to completely boom. I think conferences right now are interesting, but those are really hard. This actually seems way easier to pull off. All types of meetups, Airbnbs. I'm 100% on board that I think that in person is the move.
Yeah, I think that. So then I started thinking, like, what are the other opportunities? And so I think you could just like go compete with these guys on like either the same brands or another brand. So like what they did was the V-Star guy took TV IP, turned it into a live show. What the Blippi guy is doing is taking YouTube IP and turning it into a live show. And I think you could just even do this for more. So like, I think you could even do like, we've talked about religion, which is the greatest free IP in the world. So I think somebody could do this for religion, which would make it extremely kid-friendly, in fact, kid-focused, like Christianity show, basically. I think you could do this for dinosaurs or science as a generic genre, because like if kids love trucks and dinosaurs or whatever, and you could just basically create the like the show, you know, Day with Dinosaurs or something like that. And once you get like, if you have a certain level of quality, moms will spread this and they will talk about it, and they will like in their mommy groups, they will help you sell these tickets. And I just feel like there's it's not that hard. Like you build one show and then you sell that one show 1,000 times, right? Like the show goes on tour. Mamma Mia has made like, I don't know, some stupid amount of money just being the same show on tour with replacing the low cost actors over time.
While we're talking, I'm trying to find the numbers. So we did events, but we would do like this thing called HustleCon, which was like our big one where like thousands of people would come. But then we do this thing called 2X. And 2X was basically from like 7 p.m. to like 10 p.m. And it was basically, we got 15 or 10 women, all who were in tech and business. Not that many of them were like well known, but they would have 10 minutes to like tell a story, and we would charge like $25, but then we would get tens of thousands of dollars in sponsors. But we got to the point where we could pull this off like kind of like almost weekly in other cities. And when we started doing this, the hustle wasn't that popular, but we were making like, I think like 30 grand a night when we were doing it. And we had one employee running it. Right. And she would use a team of contractors, and then we wouldn't supply anything. Like, I think we had free wine, but I don't know. I don't even think it was free. We wouldn't supply anything. But then when we have corporate sponsors, and we crushed it. And in my head, I'm like, I can always fall back on this to make a living because it was so much easier than people thought.
Right.
Wow,
that's pretty good for a tech bro business. Like you were running one of the best like women's entrepreneurship events.
Yeah,
in
because
the country. You got labeled wrong, dude.
I did. Yeah, I'm like an onion, man. There's layers. So, but basically, like we used to do this thing called Pizza in 40s, where we would do a meetup, and I would interview someone, and they would drink a 40 ounce, and when the 40 ounce beer was done, the talk was done. But then like women were like, this is like, there's all dudes here. And so we created like a wine version, and that had like way better. It was like called like cheese and wine. I don't even remember, but that had way better engagement. And so we're like, oh, like let's pursue this vein. Like there's clearly an opportunity here. And so we created 2X, which it's like 2X chromosomes, which I thought was clever. I stole it from Reddit. But anyway, we would do, I think we did 10 or 12 in 1 year. And every single time it was like 20 and 30 grand. And the cost was nothing. The cost was renting the venue, which cost like $3,000, and we would make like 20 grand.
You had readers in every city, right? So that's how you sold the tickets. Is that?
Yeah. But we weren't, basically the speakers sold the tickets. The reason why we had 15 speakers was I was like, I bet each 15 will get 25 people to come, plus our like little bit of our engine. Like this is easy.
And you weren't making the money off the tickets. You're making it off the sponsors, really, anyways.
The tickets, the business model was the tickets paid for the event, and then the conference was all, or the sponsors were all the profit. But when there's two things going on. One, like women. So whenever you have like an underserved community, like sponsors definitely are willing to pay more. And two, it was like a B2B component. So it wasn't kids component, which I think would alter the economics. But my point of it is that I think that it was far easier than people thought. And it was way more rudimentary and raw than people thought. And it worked. We just used Splash That. I think if you Google like 2X The Hustle, you'll like see like the Splash That is basically Eventbrite. It was nothing special. And it freaking worked.